Terry Finnigan's performance record. 36 years of age, career win. Most improved driver, winner of the RCA Club Championship, 74, 78 and 79. ARDC Club Champion Trophy in 75. So as you can see, he's a well-performed driver around here at Amaroo Park and second in the Better Break Series last year.
Like who deserves to hook a big sponsor, I think, because he could do really well.
Certainly does. Aha. Now we have Steve Masterton going to do it all over again with Garry Scott of Queensland and the Nissan Bluebird. Scott got away first in the opening heat. Little touch of the fenders coming down towards the lake turn saw Scott slide off the racetrack. Ready for the flag to go up, about 5 seconds away from the start of Heat 2. Engines red, we're ready to go racing. And racing we are, and again Garry Scott gets it all down to the floor, and he is off and running. Going up to the top of picture plate. There's the field going through. Johnson making a good break, but it'll be between Scott and Steve Masterton. I think Scott has won it. Yes, he has, dropping into Dunlop Loop. He will lead in the Nissan Turbo. Second spot to Steve Masterton. Jim Richards going just a little titch wide, but he's made a good start. Richards up into third. Terry Finnigan in fourth, and Dick Johnson is fifth. Just listen to the sound of the V8s as they come down through Mazda corner.
Now keep your eye on this duel up front between Garry Scott and Steve Masterton. Remember what happened coming down into the lake corner last time.
Took a little pucker under the helmet of Garry Scott this time around. I'm sure he wasn't happy about the way he disappeared from the track in the first event.
I don't think so. Once again down, Steve Masterton rides close to the rear bumper into the lake turn, and here they come. Masterton has jumped another gear and will lead across the strike. 1 lap down, 7 remain. Steve Masterton in front.
Gee, what about power? Now that's the shortest straight on the circuit. I mean, that's there's not much of a run from the lake corner up to Wonderlick corner, and he just flattened it there and went by Scott as though he was standing still.
No question about the legitimacy of that passing move.
That was a good one, and Jim Richards has moved right up on the tail of Garry Scott in the Nissan Turbo at the wheel of the JPS BMW. Terry Finnigan is the next one back behind them, and the unsponsored Commodore. No, he's not. Dick Johnson has displaced him, and Johnson will now move to fourth in the field behind the BMW. Masterton.
Oh, by gee, coming down the back there just behind Finnigan. Callahan's tail got out and nearly put paid to Garry Wilmington.
Made a good start, Brian Callahan in 47. Went right up the outside. Here comes Wilmington. Under brakes 2 Fords, only room for 1. Callahan wins that encounter. Gets it out against the wall. Wilmington closes it up again as they come through Wonderlick corner. Masterton leading by 3 car lengths from Garry Scott. As Callahan and Wilmington debate issue in the 2 Falcons. There's the
Masterton over the top, and 5G. This machine's got a ton of power, running in under lap record time in qualifying for this series here today. A 52.42 tenths under the lap record. Whether or not he's running close to that in under race conditions is doubtful, of course, with full tanks of fuel. Well, he probably hasn't got a full tank, not for an 8-lapper around here. Garry Scott having to be content to sit back in second place. At least he's still on the racetrack. He'll be thankful for that. And they have pulled away from Jim Richards and Dick Johnson. Johnson, in fact, mounting a big challenge on Richards down through the lake corner and coming round towards the main straight again. Here goes Steve Masterton, the race leader. Garry Scott going through in the Bluebird. Here's Jimmy Richards, Dick Johnson, Terry Finnigan, and by gee, a big space to Callahan and Wilmington.
Good racing.
Bergman, the big Camaro going through. He's a game man. That he wrote one off last year and went out and bought another one.
Here's the scrap between Dick Johnson in car number 17 and Jim Richards. Virtually a replay of their clash in the opening heat. Little gap left open there. Will Johnson take advantage of it? He's putting the pressure well and truly on Jim Richards. Very daring move. Only leading contender can get away with that one and do it so nicely. So Dick Johnson moves up in the pack and now into third place coming out of the corner. Richards back to fourth. Fifth is Finnigan in number 10. And they have pulled probably 100 metres away from Brian Callahan and Garry Wilmington.
Well, with all that power under the bonnet of the big XE Falcon, it'll be interesting to see whether or not Dick Johnson can now begin to reel in Garry Scott in the Nissan Bluebird. There's a fair space between him and Scott. But he is pulling away from Jim Richards at a pretty rapid rate, isn't he?
He is, certainly. I think we might see Johnson fare a little better against the Nissan Turbo, perhaps in the 10-lapper. There's Dick Johnson, car number 17, running in both the Alfa Romeo Trophy Series today and, of course, the touring cars and the Farmer Motorcraft entry, car number 17.
Says he's determined to stay on all four wheels.
Oh, there's Richards off the course, coming through that corner. We'll see if he gets back on again. Yes, he did. Fine driving that from Richards. Got the back wheel out in the dirt and had to correct the car.
Behind Terry Finnigan now, though.
He's dropped back one more spot.
So it's Masterton first, Scott second, Johnson third, Finnigan fourth. Then comes Jim Richards in fifth spot, followed by Brian Callahan and Garry Wilmington. Mike Bergman is in seventh spot on the track and is under threat from Christine Gibson in the little Nissan Exa Turbo.
There's Richards going up Bitchapove again, trying to pull back the couple of spots that he lost. One to Terry Finnigan, and the half a lap prior to that, one to Dick Johnson. That was third place that he was holding down. They must be delighted, Frank Gardner, with the way that the BMW has been running, carrying, of course, under capacity compared to the V8s that are running. But Jim is delighted with the handling that they've been able to achieve with the car this year. Track record for the production touring cars, 52.6 seconds, held by Barry Jones of the Mazda RX-7, but in practice yesterday to secure pole position, Steve Masterton was under the track record with a 52.4. If he can record a time in one of the heats this afternoon and pull off 52.4, he'll have the track record back. I think there'll be a lot of Ford lovers who'd love to see the V8 back here with the outright record.
That's getting down to almost sports sedan performance, isn't it?
Well, it's running like a sports sedan. Beautifully turned out car. Jim Masterton must be delighted to be finally enjoying some success with the amount of involvement and certainly a great investment in touring cars with the Masterton Homes Falcon. Good to see.
Big leader, Steve Masterton, coming down through Honda corner, takes the left-hander on the way down to the lake again, just coming around to get the last lap board, in fact, for Steve. And he's got about 130 yards now over Garry Scott as they go through the corner, and a similar distance to Dick Johnson in third place.
And a similar distance again, I suppose, to Terry Finnigan.
Coming,
Jim Richards.
Coming up to take the last lap board, Steve Masterton, race leader, won the 5-lap sprint, running away with the 8-lapper. 10 still to come to round off the Better Breaks Series round here today at Amaroo Park. Now, if he can enjoy some success and reliability with this car in rounds of the Australian Touring Car Championship, I think he's going to really cause a few of the front runners some problems.
Peter Brock and Alan Moffat may not be here, but I don't think they'd be doing much better than Steve Masterton.
I rather doubt Steve is a fellow who, once he gets to the front, doesn't ease up the pace. He keeps it on, and the Ford's running beautifully here today.
Well, even when he's in second spot, he doesn't ease up.
Nope. That's Garry Scott.
Coming around for the last corner now, Steve Masterton. He's got the car wound up. He's got the Grace safely in his keeping. Takes it comfortably, lines up for the checkered flag. There it goes. And he's made it 2 out of 2, Steve Masterton, in the 2 rounds so far here today of the Better Breaks AMSCAR Series. Garry Scott going through in second, Dick Johnson third, then Terry Finnigan.